Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. For those of you who caught our last episode.
Episode 5?
Yeah, episode 5. We were talking about conversational quality, and how important it is. And
in episode 112.
yeah, in episode 112 of the Work and Play podcast.
Oh, the actual Work and Play podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you haven't checked that out, go back and give it a listen. But today, we are going all the way back
to the beginning.
to the very beginning, episode 9.
Wow.
What we can learn from Aryelle's hosting back then.
Oh, okay.
This is like a masterclass for all of our new podcasters out there.
Yeah, this is great because it's interesting to sort of see how someone develops as a host over time. And you can learn a lot from somebody just starting out because we've all been there.
Yeah, so let's jump right in. One thing that really stood out from the analysis was Aryelle's ability to make her guests comfortable. Right off the bat, she's using humor. She's acknowledging her guests' expertise. She's setting a positive tone. There's actually a moment, I think it's around the 5-minute mark, where she shares this funny anecdote that's related to the guest's work.
Oh, okay.
And it's so subtle, but it's so effective in breaking the ice.
It is. And I think that is so important for new podcasters, to make your guest feel comfortable. Because if the guest is comfortable, they're going to give you good content. They're going to open up. They're going to be, they're going to enjoy the experience more, I think.
Absolutely. And it's a better listening experience for everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
The analysis also highlighted Aryelle's natural ability to listen actively.
Okay.
She asks really thoughtful follow-up questions. She digs into the guest's responses. And there's this great example around the 12-minute mark where she picks up on this subtle point that the guest makes. And she asks this clarifying question that reveals a whole new layer of insight.
It's amazing how doing that can really change the whole conversation. Because it not only shows the guest that you're listening to them and that you're, interested in what they have to say, but you might unlock something that they didn't even know they were going to talk about.
Yeah. And for new listeners, it's oh, I didn't even think about that.
Exactly.
Now, the analysis did point out that Aryelle's enthusiasm sometimes led to some interruptions.
Oh, sure.
There's a moment around the 20-minute mark where she jumps in with a comment before the guest has fully finished their thought.
Okay.
And, her excitement is endearing, but it's a good reminder for new podcasters about finding that balance,
Yeah. It's a tough one, right? Because you want to be engaged in the conversation, but you also don't want to step on your guest's toes. There's a fine line there, and it's something that you just kind of learn as you go along.
Yeah.
I think one thing that could be helpful is to give it a 3-second beat before you jump in. So when the guest is finished talking, just a 3-second pause.
Yeah.
That way, it gives them a chance to breathe, and it gives you a chance to make sure that they're actually finished.
That is such a good tip. I'm going to be using that myself. The analysis also touched on structure a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
And, while Aryelle does a fantastic job of guiding the conversation back to the relevant topics, there are moments where it feels a little bit meandering,
Okay.
I'm not really sure where we're going next as a listener.
I think having a structure, even a loose structure, can be helpful. Because it gives you a roadmap. It gives the listener a roadmap.
Yeah.
And you don't have to stick to it rigidly, but it's helpful to have a framework in place.
Right. You can be spontaneous. You can let the conversation go where it needs to go, but where to bring it back to.
Yeah, it's like having a safety net. You can go off and do your thing, but, the safety net is there if you need it.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
I also want to touch on summarizing key points, which Aryelle does beautifully throughout the episode. For example, towards the end, she recaps the main takeaways from the conversation.
Right.
And it ensures that those little nuggets of wisdom really stick with the listener.
Yeah, it's like putting a nice little bow on the package.
Yes.
You've given them all this great information, and then at the end you're like, okay, here's what you need to remember.
Exactly. So for all of our budding podcasters out there, what is the biggest takeaway you want them to remember from this deep dive?
I think the biggest takeaway is that finding your voice as a host takes time.
Yes.
It's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. And Aryelle's early work is a great example of that. She has this natural talent, but there are also areas where she can grow. And that's okay. Embrace the strengths and be aware of the areas where you can improve. And just remember that every conversation is a learning opportunity.
I love that.
Yeah.
So if you want to see all of this in action, definitely check out Work and Play Podcast Episode 9 for yourself. And as you embark on your own podcasting journey, I want you to think about this.
Okay.
What steps can you take today to enhance the way that you listen and engage in conversations,
That's a good one.
both on and off the mic?
Yeah, both on and off the mic, because that's really what it's all about.
It is. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.